The morning my son David threw me into Golden Sunset Care Home, he spat in my face and said, "Die there, you pig. You're nothing but a burden now." What he didn't know was that in exactly 7 days, a phone call would come that would destroy everything he thought he knew about me and himself. My name is Robert Miller. I'm 72 years old, and until that brutal Tuesday in March 2024, I believed my son was the one thing I'd done right in my life. How wrong I was. It started with breakfast. I was making scrambled eggs in my kitchen in Phoenix, the same way I'd made them every morning since Martha died 3 years ago. The radio was playing oldies, Sinatra crooning about doing it his way. When I heard the doorbell, through the peephole, I saw David standing there with his wife, Jennifer. No birthday cake, though it was my birthday. No flowers, though Martha would have reminded him if she were still alive. Just 2 faces wearing expressions I'd never seen before. Cold, calculated, almost predatory. "Dad," David said when I opened the door, not even bothering with a greeting. "We need to talk." The way he said it made my blood run cold. This wasn't my son coming for a visit. This was something else entirely. Jennifer stood behind him, her designer purse clutched tight, her lips pressed into a thin line of determination. Come in," I said, stepping aside. "I was just making breakfast. Would you like some eggs?" "We're not staying for breakfast," Jennifer said, her voice sharp as broken glass. It was the most she'd spoken to me directly in months. They walked into my living room, the room where David had taken his first steps, where we'd celebrated 35 Christmases, where I'd held him as he cried after his first heartbreak. Now he stood there like a stranger, pulling documents from a leather folder. "What's this about, son?" I asked, though part of me already knew. The signs had been there for months, shorter visits, forgotten phone calls, Jennifer's increasingly transparent excuses for why they couldn't come to Sunday dinners. "You can't live alone anymore," David said flatly. "Yesterday, Mrs. Rodriguez saw you talking to yourself in the garden. Last week, you left the stove on. You're becoming a danger to yourself and others." Mrs. Rodriguez, my neighbor of 15 years. I'd been reading poetry aloud in the garden, something Martha and I used to do together. But David didn't want to hear explanations. "I've made arrangements," he continued, spreading papers across my coffee table. "Golden Sunset Care Home. It's adequate. Medicare will cover most of it." "A nursing home?" The words came out as barely a whisper. "David, I'm fine. I had the stove on because I was cooking. Stop." He held up his hand like he was directing traffic. "This isn't a discussion. It's done. The room is ready. Transport arrives at 3 p.m. Transport? I looked at my son, really looked at him. When had he become this person? The little boy who used to crawl into my bed during thunderstorms, who called me his hero when I fixed his bicycle, who promised he'd take care of me when I got old. Where had he gone? "David, please, let's talk about this. If you're worried, I could—" "Could what?" Jennifer interjected, her voice dripping with contempt. "Move in with us? Absolutely not. We have our own lives, Robert, our own plans. You've lived yours. Now it's our turn." "But you're living in the house I helped you buy," I wanted to say. "The down payment I gave you, thinking I was investing in family, in staying close. But I kept quiet. Pride is a luxury you can't afford when you're begging your child for mercy." "Sign here," David said, pointing to a line on one of the documents. "It's just formality, power of attorney, for your own protection." I looked at the papers. The words blurred through tears I refused to let fall. What if I refuse? David's expression darkened. Dad, you're 72 years old. You talk to dead people. You forget things. Do you really want me to go the legal route? To have you declared incompetent? Because I will. Jennifer's brother is a lawyer. We're prepared. Incompetent. The word hit like a physical blow. This was my son, my only child, threatening to destroy my dignity completely if I didn't surrender it voluntarily. With shaking hands, I signed the papers. Each signature felt like signing my own death warrant. Good, David said, collecting the documents. Pack light, 1 suitcase, essentials only. We'll handle the house. Handle the house. My house. Where Martha's presence still lingered in every room, where her rose bush still bloomed in the backyard, where her handwriting still marked recipes in the kitchen cookbooks. Can I at least take photos? I asked. 1 box, Jennifer said, checking her watch. Small. We don't want you cluttering your new room. New room, not home. Room. David stood to leave, then paused at the door. What he said next broke whatever was left of my heart. You know, Dad, I've been carrying you for years, ever since Mom died. The constant calls, the neediness, the guilt trips. I'm done. Jennifer's pregnant. Did you know that? No, of course you didn't. You only think about yourself. Pregnant. My son was having a baby, and I was just finding out as he discarded me like old furniture. David, a grandchild. That's wonderful. You nothing, he snarled, and for the first time, I saw real hatred in his eyes. You think that baby needs a grandfather who talks to ghosts, who can't even remember to turn off a stove? You're not going to be part of this child's life, not if I have anything to say about it. But I'm your father, I whispered. No, David said coldly. You were my father. Now you're just a problem I'm solving. He turned to leave, then looked back one more time. The transport will be here at 3. Be ready. And Dad, don't make this harder than it needs to be. But what happened next made everything else seem like a gentle goodbye. As they walked toward the door, I heard Jennifer whisper something to David. He nodded, then turned back to me with a smile. But not a kind smile. It was the smile of someone who'd won a long, bitter game. Oh, and Dad, about your finances. Jennifer and I will be managing everything from now on. Your Social Security, your pension, that little savings account you think we don't know about. It's for your own good. The home is expensive, and someone needs to maintain this house until we decide what to do with it. Decide what to do with it? I echoed. Well, we can't leave it sitting empty, Jennifer said, her tone practical. The market's good right now. That equity could really help with the baby's college fund. They were going to sell my house, Martha's house, the place where every memory of our life together lived. You can't, I started. Actually, we can, David interrupted. Power of attorney, remember? You just signed it. Everything you own is under our control now. For your own protection, of course. He walked back to me then, close enough that I could smell his expensive cologne. When had he started wearing cologne? And said the words that would haunt me forever. Die there, you pig. You're nothing but a burden now. Mom would be disgusted by what you've become. Then he spat. Actually spat. The saliva hit my cheek and slid down like a tear. My body was crying since my eyes couldn't anymore. They left then, the door slamming with a finality that echoed through the suddenly empty house. I stood there, my son's spit still on my face, trying to understand how I'd become such a burden that my own child would dispose of me like trash. But here's what David didn't know, what he couldn't know, because I'd hidden it so well for so many years. You see, there was a reason I sometimes talked to people who weren't there. There was a reason I was so careful about certain things, so paranoid about others. There was a reason Martha and I had really moved to Phoenix 35 years ago, when David was just 10. And in exactly 7 days, that reason was going to come calling. The transport arrived at 3 p.m. sharp. It wasn't an ambulance, just a medical van with senior transitions painted on the side in cheerful yellow letters. The driver, a young man named Carlos, was kind enough, helping me with my single suitcase and cardboard box of photos. "First time?" he asked gently as we drove away from my home. "Last time," I replied, watching my neighborhood disappear through the rear window. Golden Sunset Care Home was exactly what you'd expect from a place that accepted Medicare and not much else. 3 stories of beige stucco, wheelchairs scattered across a patchy lawn, and the faint smell of disinfectant mixed with cafeteria food. The sign out front promised dignity and comfort in your golden years. But dignity was the last thing I felt walking through those automatic doors. The administrator, Mrs. Paulson, was aggressively cheerful in that way people are when they're trying to convince you something terrible is actually wonderful. "Mr. Miller, welcome to Golden Sunset. Your son has taken care of all the paperwork. You're in room 247. That's on our secured wing." Secured wing? Like a prisoner? "I don't have dementia," I said quietly. "Of course not, dear," she said, patting my hand condescendingly. "The secured wing is just for residents who might be wandering risks. Your son was very specific about your needs." My needs. As defined by the son who'd just stolen my freedom, my dignity, and my home. The room was small, maybe 10 by 12 feet, single bed with rails, a narrow dresser, a chair that had seen better decades, a small bathroom with grab bars everywhere, a window that looked out onto the parking lot. "Dinner's at 5:30, Mrs. Paulson chirped. "Activities room opens at 8 a.m., lights out at 9 p.m. Your medications will be distributed by our nursing staff." "I manage my own medications," I protested. "Not anymore, I'm afraid. Facility rules. Your son was very concerned about medication compliance." After she left, I sat on the narrow bed and finally let myself cry. Not dramatic sobs, just quiet tears for the life I'd lost, the son I'd failed to raise right, and the grandchild I'd never know. That's when my roommate wheeled himself over from the other side of the room, divided by a thin curtain. Tommy Chen, 78 years old, sharp as a tack despite the wheelchair. "First day?" he asked, offering me a tissue from the box on his lap. "Last day of my real life," I replied. "That's what I thought too," Tommy said. "Been here 3 years now. My daughter's decision. Said I couldn't manage the stairs anymore. Funny thing, I lived in a ranch house." We sat in silence for a moment. 2 discarded fathers in a warehouse for the unwanted. "What did you do?" Tommy asked. "Before, I mean, when you were still a person." It was such a simple question, but it opened a floodgate I'd kept closed for decades. "I was an accountant," I said, which was true. "But before that, I was something else. That night, I couldn't sleep. The bed was too narrow, the room too hot, and the sounds of the nursing home, coughing, crying, the squeak of wheelchairs in the hallway created a symphony of despair. But mostly, I couldn't stop thinking about the phone call that would come in 7 days. You see, 35 years ago, I wasn't Robert Miller, certified public accountant. I was Robert Kowalski, and I worked for the FBI as a forensic accountant specializing in organized crime. Martha knew, of course. She'd been with me through it all. But David? We'd never told David. How do you explain to a 10-year-old boy that Daddy's job analyzing numbers helped put away some of the most dangerous people in Chicago? How do you tell him that the reason we suddenly moved to Phoenix, changed our names, and cut ties with everyone we knew was because Daddy's testimony had destroyed a criminal empire, and now there were people who very much wanted Daddy dead? You don't. You tell him Daddy got a better job offer. You tell him Arizona will be an adventure. You tell him anything but the truth. The next morning, my first full day as a prisoner, breakfast was served at 6:30 a.m. sharp. Lukewarm oatmeal, cold toast, and coffee that tasted like disappointment. I sat with Tommy, who introduced me to the unwritten rules of Golden Sunset. "Never complain about the food to the staff," he said, stirring his oatmeal with disgust. "They'll mark you as difficult. Difficult residents get forgotten during shower time, if you know what I mean." "The nurses seem nice enough," I observed, watching Sarah, a young woman with kind eyes, help another resident with their medications. "Some are angels, some are devils. Most are just counting hours until their shift ends," Tommy replied. "Sarah there, she's one of the good ones. But watch out for the night shift supervisor, Bradley. Man's got a mean streak wider than the Grand Canyon." As if summoned by his name, Bradley appeared, a large man with small eyes and a permanent scowl. "Miller," he barked. "Phone call. Office." A phone call? Nobody knew I was here except David and Jennifer. The call was from my former neighbor, Mrs. Rodriguez. "Robert, is that you? I saw them take you yesterday. I'm so sorry. I tried to tell your son that you were just reading poetry, but he wouldn't listen." "It's okay, Elena," I said, though it wasn't. "No, it's not. I know what they're doing. I saw them at your house this morning with a real estate agent. They're not wasting any time." "Already? They were already selling my home." "Robert, there's something else. A man came by yesterday evening after they took you. Tall, gray suit, very official looking. He was asking about you. Said he was an old friend from Chicago." My blood went cold. Nobody from Chicago should know where I was. Nobody from that life should even know I was still alive. "What did you tell him?" "Nothing. I don't talk to strangers. But Robert, he left a card. Should I?" "No," I said quickly. "Throw it away, please." But I knew it was already too late. They'd found me. After 35 years, somehow, they'd found me. That afternoon, during what they generously called recreational time, which consisted of 20 residents staring at a television playing a game show nobody was watching. I noticed things. Little things that others might miss, but that someone trained to observe would catch. The new janitor who cleaned the same spot for 20 minutes while watching the entrance. The delivery driver who seemed more interested in checking room numbers than delivering packages. The way certain staff members appeared whenever I moved from one area to another. I wasn't paranoid. I'd lived this way for 35 years, always watching, always ready. Martha used to say I saw shadows where there was only light, but she understood. She knew what we'd sacrificed for our safety, for David's normal childhood. David, my son who thought I was nothing but a burden. "You okay?" Tommy asked, wheeling up beside me. "You're gripping that armrest like it owes you money." "Tommy," I said quietly, "if I told you something unbelievable, would you think I was crazy?" He laughed. "Miller, I'm 78 years old, abandoned by my family, living in a Medicare warehouse. Nothing surprises me anymore. So I told him, not everything, but enough. About my past life, about the testimony that brought down the Torelli crime family, about the witness protection program that gave us new identities and a new life in Phoenix. Tommy listened without interrupting, then said, "So that's why you talk to people who aren't there. You're checking if you're being watched." "Old habits," I admitted. "And in 7 days?" "In 7 days, it'll be exactly 35 years since my testimony. There was an agreement. After 35 years, if there had been no attempts on my life, certain restrictions would be lifted, documents would be unsealed, and there's a trust fund. Money the FBI seized from the Torelli family that was set aside for my family's future, accessible only after the 35-year mark. How much money are we talking about?" $12 million. Tommy whistled low. "And your son doesn't know?" "Nobody knows except the FBI and me. Martha knew about the witness protection, but not about the money. I thought I'd tell David when the time came. Make it a surprise. Set him and his family up for life." I laughed bitterly. "Guess the joke's on me." "You still planning to give it to him after what he did?" I didn't answer because I honestly didn't know. That evening, during dinner, mystery meat and overcooked vegetables, Sarah, the nurse, stopped by our table. "Mr. Miller, you have a visitor." My heart jumped. David? Had he come to apologize? To take me home? But it wasn't David. It was a woman I'd never seen before. Mid-40s, professional suit, eyes that missed nothing. She sat across from me in the visiting room and placed a badge on the table. "Mr. Kowalski," she said quietly. "My name is Special Agent Linda Patterson. I'm with the FBI's Witness Security Program." I hadn't heard that name in 35 years. "It's Miller now." "Of course, Mr. Miller. We need to talk about your situation." "What situation?" "I'm in a nursing home. My situation is pretty clear." She leaned forward. 3 days ago, Anthony Torelli Jr. was released from federal prison. The room spun. Anthony Jr., the son of the man my testimony had sent to die in prison. He'd been 17 when I testified against his father, screaming threats at me from the gallery until the bailiffs dragged him out. "He served 35 years?" I asked. "Conspiracy, racketeering, and attempted murder. He got out on good behavior, if you can believe that." She pulled out a photo. An older man, prison-hardened, with eyes that held 3 decades of rage. He was picked up at the gates by some old family associates. They drove straight to Chicago, to his father's old neighborhood. And then they disappeared. But before they did, someone using Anthony Jr.'s credentials accessed sealed court records, your sealed records. "That's why there are people watching the nursing home," I said. She nodded. "We've had agents in place since yesterday. The janitor, the delivery driver, they're ours." "So I'm safe?" "For now. But Mr. Miller, we have a problem. Your son filed paperwork making this facility your permanent residence. It's public record. Anyone looking for Robert Miller, formerly Robert Kowalski, will find you here." "Can you move me?" "Not without your son's consent. He has power of attorney." The irony was almost funny. My son had trapped me in place just in time for my past to find me. "There's something else," Agent Patterson said. "The trust fund. It becomes accessible in 6 days. $12 million will be transferred to your designated account." "David doesn't know about it." "I know, but here's the thing. With power of attorney, he'll have access to it as soon as it's deposited." I felt sick. David, who'd thrown me away like garbage, would inherit $12 million he didn't even know existed. Money I'd earned by risking my life, by giving up everything I was, by living in fear for 35 years. Can I change the beneficiary? I asked. Not without revoking the power of attorney, which you can't do without proving mental competence, which would require legal proceedings, which would take months. So I'm stuck. There might be another way, she said carefully, but it would require you to trust us completely. Before she could explain, there was a commotion in the hallway. Shouting, then the sound of something crashing. Bradley, the mean night supervisor, burst into the visiting room. Everyone back to their rooms. Now, we have a situation. Agent Patterson stood quickly, her hand moving to her concealed weapon. What kind of situation? Someone tried to break into the medication room, Bradley said, his face flushed. We've called the police. But I knew it wasn't someone trying to steal medications. It was a distraction. In my old life, I'd seen this play before. Create chaos in one area while the real action happens somewhere else. It's starting, I whispered to Agent Patterson. She nodded grimly. We need to move you. Now. I told you, I can't leave without... Mr. Miller. Sarah the nurse ran in, panic in her eyes. Your son is here. He's demanding to see you. He seems agitated. David? At 9 p.m.? That couldn't be good. He stormed into the visiting room like a hurricane, Jennifer trailing behind him. His face was red, his expensive suit disheveled. What did you do? He demanded, grabbing my shoulders. What did you do with the money? What money? I asked, genuinely confused. Don't play dumb. The house sale fell through. The buyer's financing came back weird. They found liens, federal liens from 35 years ago. Something about asset forfeiture and witness protection. What the hell is witness protection, Dad? Agent Patterson stepped forward, badge visible. Mr. Miller, I think we need to have a conversation. David's eyes widened as he took in the FBI badge, then looked back at me. FBI? Dad, what is going on? The visiting room at Golden Sunset Care Home had probably never seen anything like this. An FBI agent, an elderly witness protection participant, his greedy son, and a daughter-in-law who looked like she'd swallowed a lemon, all sitting around a plastic table under fluorescent lights that made everyone look sick. Your father, Agent Patterson began, is not who you think he is. David laughed, but it was nervous laughter. He's Robert Miller, retired accountant, boring old man who talks to himself. No, I said quietly. I was Robert Kowalski, before you were 10, before we moved to Phoenix. What are you talking about? David's voice was rising. We moved because you got a better job. We moved because I testified against the Torelli crime family. We were in witness protection, David. Your mother and I, we gave up everything to keep you safe. The color drained from David's face. Jennifer grabbed his arm, her perfectly manicured nails digging into his sleeve. This is insane, she whispered. He's senile. He's making this up. Agent Patterson opened her briefcase and pulled out a file, sliding it across the table. Photos from my old life. Court documents with my real name. Newspaper clippings about the trial that had made national news. Your father's testimony put away 17 members of organized crime, she said. He analyzed their financial records, found the money trails, proved the murders. He's a hero, Mr. Miller. He saved lives. David stared at the photos. One showed me, 35 years younger, being escorted from a courthouse by federal marshals. Another showed Anthony Torelli Sr. in handcuffs, screaming at the camera. "This is why Mom was always so paranoid," David said slowly. "Why you never talked about family back east. Why we never— oh my God. Every precaution we took, every move we made, was to protect you," I said. "You had a normal childhood because we made sure of it." "Normal?" David stood up so fast his chair fell over. "You lied to me my entire life. To keep you safe. From what? From who? It's been 35 years. Agent Patterson cleared her throat. "Actually, that's why I'm here. Anthony Torelli Jr. was released from prison 3 days ago." David sat back down heavily. "The son? He blames your father for his father's death in prison. We have credible intelligence that he's coming here." "Here?" Jennifer squeaked. "To Phoenix?" "He may already be here," Patterson said. "We've identified at least 3 of his associates in the city." "But why now?" David asked. "After all this time?" I looked at my son. Really looked at him. Despite everything he'd done, I still saw the little boy who used to climb into my lap during thunderstorms. "Because in 6 days, something happens," I said. "Something I never told you about, never told your mother about." "What?" "When I agreed to testify, the FBI seized millions from the Torelli family. Drug money, extortion money, blood money. Part of the deal was that after 35 years, if I survived, a portion would be put in trust for my family. For you." David's mouth opened and closed like a fish. How much?" $12 million. Jennifer made a sound like a wounded animal. David just stared. "You were going to get $12 million and you put me in a nursing home?" I asked quietly. "I didn't know," David exploded. "How could I know? You never told me anything. I was going to tell you on the anniversary, make it a surprise, set up your child's future." I looked at Jennifer's belly, noting the slight swell I hadn't seen before. "But you couldn't wait, could you? You had to throw me away first." "This changes everything," Jennifer said quickly. "David, we need to get him out of here, if there are criminals coming." "No," I said firmly. "You made your choice. You signed papers. You spit in my face and told me to die." "Dad, I didn't mean—" "Die there, you pig." Those were your exact words. Agent Patterson interrupted. "Gentlemen, we have a more immediate problem. With Mr. Miller Jr. having power of attorney, he technically controls those funds when they're released. But if Anthony Torelli Jr. knows about the money, he'll come for David too," I finished. "My son and his pregnant wife are now targets." The realization hit David like a physical blow. He grabbed Jennifer's hand, his face pale. "We need protection," he said to Patterson. "Federal protection, like witness protection." "That's not how it works," Patterson replied. "You're not witnesses. You've committed no crimes that would warrant protection in exchange for testimony." "But my father?" "Your father is our concern. You'll need to make your own arrangements." Just then, Tommy wheeled himself into the visiting room, completely ignoring Bradley's protests. "Miller, you need to see this," he said urgently, holding up his phone. On the screen was a news article from that evening. 3 men found dead in Phoenix hotel, execution-style murders shock community. Patterson grabbed the phone, her face grim as she read. "These are Torelli's men. Someone killed them." "Who?" I asked, though I had a sinking feeling I knew. "If not Torelli's people, then someone else who knows about the money," she said. "Mr. Kowalski, Miller. There may be more players in this game than we thought." David was pacing now, running his hands through his hair, a gesture I recognized from when he was young and overwhelmed. "We need to leave," he said. "All of us, tonight. Dad, I'm sorry for everything, but we need to go." "I can't leave," I reminded him. "You made sure of that. Legal guardianship, remember?" "Then I'll revoke it." "That takes time," Patterson said. "Days, maybe weeks." "We don't have weeks," David shouted. "You just said there are killers in Phoenix." That's when the lights went out. Emergency lighting kicked in a second later, bathing everything in an eerie red glow. Patterson immediately drew her weapon. "Everyone stay calm," she said, though her voice suggested she was anything but. Bradley's voice came over the intercom. "Ladies and gentlemen, we're experiencing a power outage. Please remain where you are. Backup generators will restore full power momentarily." But I knew better. This wasn't a power outage. This was tactical. "They're here," I whispered. Gunfire erupted somewhere in the building, not the sharp crack of handguns, but the distinctive chatter of automatic weapons. Screams followed. Patterson grabbed her radio. "This is Patterson. We have a code red at Golden Sunset. Multiple shooters. Request immediate backup." Static was her only answer. "They're jamming communications," she said. "This is professional." Jennifer was crying, clutching David. My son, for all his recent cruelty, moved to protect his wife, putting his body between her and the door. "Dad," he said, his voice shaking. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I didn't know. I didn't understand." "Later," I said, though I wondered if there would be a later. Tommy, surprisingly calm, wheeled over to a cabinet and pulled out a revolver. "Vietnam," he said simply when we stared. "Some habits die hard." More gunfire, closer now. We could hear Bradley screaming orders, then his voice cut off abruptly. "We need to move," Patterson said. "There's a service elevator in the kitchen. We can—" The door exploded inward. 3 men in tactical gear stormed in, weapons raised. But before they could speak, before they could act, something unexpected happened. Sarah, sweet nurse Sarah, appeared behind them and efficiently shot all 3 with a silenced pistol. "Mr. Kowalski," she said calmly, stepping over the bodies. "We need to go, now." "You're not a nurse," I said, staring at the woman I'd thought was one of the good ones. "No, I'm formerly Torelli family, but I have a better offer now." She looked at David and Jennifer. "Them too, their leverage." "Leverage for what?" Patterson demanded, her weapon trained on Sarah. "For the $12 million that belongs to my employer." "Who's your employer?" I asked. Sarah smiled. It wasn't a kind smile anymore. "Someone who's been waiting 35 years for this moment. Someone you thought was dead." My blood turned to ice. It couldn't be. He'd died in prison. I'd seen the death certificate. "Anthony Torelli Sr., I whispered. "Very good, Mr. Kowalski. He's been quite eager to meet you again. Shall we go?" Patterson started to raise her weapon, but Sarah was faster, shooting the FBI agent in the shoulder. Patterson dropped, her gun sliding across the floor. "No!" I moved toward her, but Sarah pointed the weapon at David. "Your choice, Mr. Kowalski. Come quietly, or watch your son die, just like you watched my uncle die after your testimony." Sarah Torelli. Not a nurse, a plant waiting for this moment. "How long have you been here?" I asked. 2 years. We knew you'd end up somewhere like this eventually. Old men always do. I just had to wait. But the other murders. Competition. Others want the money too. The Chicago outfit, the New York families. Everyone knows about the 12 million. But we have you. which means we win." Tommy raised his revolver, but Sarah shot him in the chest without even looking. My friend, my only friend in this place, crumpled in his wheelchair. "No more heroes," Sarah said. "Move." As we were marched out, stepping over bodies of staff and residents, I saw the full scope of the massacre. Golden Sunset Care Home had become a slaughterhouse, all for money that was supposed to secure my family's future. David was supporting Jennifer, who seemed in shock. He kept looking at me, his eyes full of questions, apologies, and fear. "I'm sorry," he whispered as we were forced into a van outside. "Dad, I'm so sorry." "I know," I said. And I did, but sorry wouldn't save us now. The van drove through the Phoenix night, away from the sirens converging on Golden Sunset, toward a confrontation 35 years in the making. I thought about Martha, grateful she wasn't alive to see this. I thought about the grandchild I'd just learned about, who might never be born. But mostly, I thought about how to turn this around, because I hadn't survived 35 years in hiding by giving up. Sarah sat across from us, her weapon steady. "Your testimony destroyed everything," she said conversationally. "The family, the business, our lives. Do you know what it's like growing up with the Torelli name, being the niece of a crime boss? Do you know what it's like living in fear for 35 years? I countered. She shrugged. "You made your choice. Now you'll face the consequences." The van stopped at a warehouse on the outskirts of the city. Of course, it was a warehouse. It was always a warehouse with these people. Inside, under harsh industrial lights, an old man waited in a wheelchair. Oxygen tank beside him, surrounded by armed men, but his eyes were sharp as ever. Anthony Torelli Sr., the man I'd helped send to prison, the man whose death had been faked, apparently, to give him this opportunity. "Hello, Robert," he wheezed. "We have so much to discuss." Anthony Torelli Sr. looked like death warmed over. 35 years had not been kind to him. The man I remembered as powerful and terrifying was now a skeleton in a wheelchair, kept alive by machines and hatred. "You look surprised, Robert," he wheezed through his oxygen mask. "Did you really think a little thing like death could keep me from my revenge?" "The FBI said you died in prison 15 years ago," I said. "The FBI says a lot of things." He gestured weakly to one of his men, who brought over a chair. "Sit, all of you. We're going to have a family reunion." David and Jennifer were forced into chairs beside me. My son kept trying to shield his wife, even though he was trembling himself. In that moment, despite everything, I was proud of him. "You know," Torelli continued, "I spent 20 years in that cell thinking about this moment, how I would make you suffer, how I would take everything from you, just like you took everything from me." "You were a murderer," I said, "a drug dealer. You destroyed families." "I was a businessman," he roared, then collapsed into coughing. Sarah rushed over with his medication. "I provided services. I kept order until you came along with your numbers and your testimony." "Dad," David whispered, "what do we do?" "We wait," I whispered back, "and we watch." Because I was watching. Counting the guards, 7. Noting the exits, 3. Observing the weapons, mixed small arms, no heavy artillery. But most importantly, I was watching Sarah Torelli. She wasn't happy. Oh, she played the dutiful niece, but there was tension in her shoulders, doubt in her eyes. 2 years undercover as a nurse, taking care of elderly people, that changes you, whether you want it to or not. "The money," Torelli said once he'd recovered. $12 million of my money, stolen by the government and promised to you. It transfers in 6 days. 5 days now, I corrected. It's past midnight. 5 days, then. You're going to sign it over to me. All of it. And then you'll kill us. He smiled, a death's head grin. Eventually. But first, your son needs to understand the cost of betrayal. Just like you made my son understand when you sent me away. Your son was a criminal too. My son was 17, Torelli exploded. Anthony Jr. was a child when you destroyed our family. Where is he now? I asked. Why isn't he here for this grand revenge? Something flickered across Torelli's face. Sarah looked away. He's handling other business, Torelli said, but I heard the lie. That's when it clicked. The 3 dead men in the hotel. That wasn't competition. That was Anthony Jr.'s crew. You killed your own son's men. Shut up. He doesn't know you're alive, does he? He's been in prison for 35 years, and you never told him you faked your death. He thinks he's avenging you. Sarah's hand tightened on her weapon. I'd hit a nerve. He was weak, Torelli spat. Prison made him soft. He wanted to just kill you, quickly. No suffering, no lesson, just revenge and done. So you killed his men and took over his revenge plot. I refined it, Torelli corrected. Death is too easy, Robert. You need to suffer like I suffered. Watch your family torn apart like mine was. He gestured to one of his men, who brought over a laptop. In 5 days, you'll transfer the money. Then we'll start with the woman. He pointed at Jennifer. Not kill her, just hurt her. Let your son watch. Then maybe we take the baby. She's pregnant, you monster! David exploded, jumping up. A guard slammed him back down with the butt of a rifle. Blood ran from David's temple. Dad? A new voice from the shadows. What's happening here? Anthony Torelli Jr. walked into the light and the warehouse erupted in chaos. He looked from his father, his supposedly dead father, to Sarah, to us. Understanding dawning on his face. You're alive, he said, his voice hollow. You've been alive all this time. Junior, Torelli Sr. started, but his son cut him off. 15 years. You've been dead for 15 years while I rotted in prison, while I planned revenge for you, while I mourned you. I had to. You had to what? Hide? Let me take the fall alone? I was 17, Dad. I went to prison at 17 because of the family business, and you couldn't even tell me you were alive? The guards were confused now, weapons wavering between us and the family. Drama unfolding. Sarah stepped forward. Anthony, your father had a plan. You knew? Junior turned on her. My own cousin knew? That's when Agent Patterson entered, supported by a SWAT team that materialized from every entrance. She was bandaged but mobile, her weapon raised. FBI! Nobody move! The warehouse erupted. Gunfire, screaming, chaos. I grabbed David and Jennifer, pulling them behind an overturned table as bullets flew overhead. Sarah was shooting at the FBI, but also at Torelli Sr.'s men. Junior was screaming at his father. The old man was trying to wheel himself to safety. We need to go, I shouted to David. Where? There. I pointed to a loading dock, its door partially open. We ran, Jennifer struggling but keeping up despite her pregnancy. David half carried her, and for a moment we were a family again, united by crisis, if nothing else. Behind us, the gunfight intensified. I heard Patterson's voice over a megaphone calling for surrender. I heard Torelli Sr. screaming orders. I heard Anthony Jr. crying, actually crying, as his world collapsed. We burst through the loading dock into the cool Phoenix night. A car sat there, keys in the ignition, probably meant for a quick escape. "Get in," I ordered. As David started the car, I looked back. Sarah stood in the doorway, gun in hand. Our eyes met. She could have shot us, should have shot us. Instead, she lowered her weapon and nodded once. Then she disappeared back into the chaos. We drove in silence for several minutes before David pulled over, his hands shaking too badly to continue. "Dad," he said, tears streaming down his face, "I'm so sorry. For everything. For the home. For the things I said. For—" "I know," I said, and I did. "You didn't understand. How could you? I kept you in the dark your whole life. But I threw you away. My own father. What kind of son does that?" "A son who was lied to," I said. "A son who was frustrated and scared and manipulated by circumstances he didn't understand." Jennifer spoke for the first time in an hour. "The money, the 12 million, what happens to it now?" I laughed, actually laughed. "You know what? I don't care. Let the FBI sort it out. I'm done with blood money." "But Dad, that's your money. You earned it." "No, David. I survived to claim it. There's a difference. And you know what I learned tonight? Money makes people do terrible things. The Torellis destroyed themselves over it. You and I almost destroyed ourselves over it." We drove to a motel on the outskirts of the city, paid cash, and watched the news. Golden Sunset Care Home was a crime scene. 7 dead, 12 injured. The warehouse shootout was being called the largest organized crime bust in Phoenix history. Anthony Torelli Sr. was in custody, his fake death finally real, as he'd had a heart attack during the shooting. Anthony Jr. was also arrested, but reports suggested he was cooperating fully, his rage at his father's betrayal overcoming any family loyalty. Sarah Torelli was missing. 3 days later, Agent Patterson visited us at the FBI safe house where we were staying. "It's over," she said. "Both Torellis are going away for life. The organization is finished." "And the money?" David asked. "Frozen, pending investigation. It'll probably end up going to victims' funds and witness protection programs." She looked at me. "Unless you want to fight for it." "No," I said firmly. "I want a different life, a quiet life, a real life with my family." David took my hand. "Dad, I know I don't deserve forgiveness." "You already have it," I said. "We both made mistakes. Mine was living a lie for 35 years. Yours was not understanding why. Let's call it even." Jennifer started crying. "We were so horrible to you." "You were scared," I said. "Scared of poverty, scared of responsibility, scared of watching someone you loved decline. I understand fear better than most." 2 months later, we stood in my old house. David had managed to stop the sale, and with the power of attorney revoked, it was mine again. The walls needed painting and the garden was overgrown, but it was home. "You sure you want us here?" David asked, carrying boxes. "A grandfather needs to be near his grandchild," I said, touching Jennifer's now obvious baby bump. We'd sold David and Jennifer's house instead, using the equity to pay off their debts. They moved into my house, their house now, really. I took the converted garage apartment, close enough to be part of their lives, but independent enough to maintain my dignity. Tommy survived his gunshot and lived with us too for a while, recuperating. "Not bad for a Medicare warehouse escapee," he'd joke. One day, a package arrived with no return address. Inside was a photograph of Sarah Torelli, somewhere tropical, with a note. "Some nurses really do care. Be well. S." I burned the photo and the note. Some secrets should stay buried. The baby was born in December, a girl they named Martha after her grandmother. As I held her for the first time, David said, "I want her to know the truth, all of it, when she's old enough." "The truth can be heavy," I warned. "Lies are heavier," he replied, and I knew he was right. Golden Sunset Care Home was demolished 6 months later. They built a memorial garden for the victims. I go sometimes to remember Tommy's jokes and Sarah's strange mercy and the moment my son chose family over money. The $12 million? It's still tied up in legal proceedings. I don't care if I never see a penny. I have my son back, a daughter-in-law who now includes me in everything, and a granddaughter who thinks I'm the greatest storyteller in the world, though I only tell her fiction. For now. Sometimes David asks about those 35 years in witness protection, about the life we lived in shadows. I tell him bits and pieces, enough to satisfy curiosity, but not enough to burden him with the full weight of it. "Do you regret it?" he asked once. "Testifying?" "No," I said. "I regret the lies that followed, but not the act itself. I did the right thing." Even knowing how it would end? Especially knowing how it ended, because it brought us here, to this moment, to this truth. And that's really what this story is about. Not money or revenge or even survival. It's about the moment when a son who said, "Die there, you pig," learned that his father had spent a lifetime protecting him. It's about the moment when a father who'd been discarded like trash realized his son was still worth saving. It's about the discovery that love, real love, survives everything, even betrayal, even lies, even the truth. My name is Robert Miller. I was Robert Kowalski once, but that man is gone now. I'm 72 years old, and I'm finally free. Not from the past. We're never really free from that, but from the fear that defined it. And every morning, when I make scrambled eggs in my kitchen while my granddaughter plays at my feet and my son reads the paper across from me, I think about that morning when he threw me away. It was the worst day of my life. It was also the beginning of everything that came after. Sometimes the worst moments lead to the best endings. Sometimes it takes losing everything to find out what really matters. And what really matters isn't money or houses or even safety. It's this: a family gathered around a breakfast table, sharing scrambled eggs and the truth, finally and completely. That's worth more than $12 million. That's worth everything.